Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter and analyst for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers dropped Game 5, 99-93 to the Houston Rockets. They lose for the second straight time to make this a 3-2 series, despite Austin Reaves returning. And all the momentum and confidence has shifted toward the Houston Rockets. They have largely controlled the past 10 quarters. If I were the Rockets, I'd be kicking myself that I'm not up 3-2 in this series, although I do think you would have seen some more urgency from the Lakers side in one of the two previous games. But the Lakers are in some trouble here. Not the highest level of trouble yet, potentially. I think that would be if they lost Game 6 and this goes to 7. But of note, teams that go up 3-0 in a series are 160-0. No one has ever blown a 3-0 series lead. But this is only the 16th time in NBA history that a team that was down 3-0 forced a Game 6. So this has only happened about 10% of the time. 1 out of every 10 times the team down 3-0 even forces a Game 6. So 9 out of 10 times they lose in either 4 or 5. And so we are approaching a potential, definitely a Game 6, potentially a Game 7, with Game 6 being in Houston. And the Lakers have to take care of business as soon as possible. I think the Lakers are still in control of this series. To be clear, they have 2 more chances to win one game, and Game 7, if there is a Game 7, would be at home. So I still think the most likely scenario, if we're playing out every possible scenario here, is still the Lakers either winning in 6 or winning in 7. But they have opened the door for Houston to make a comeback here, to at least push it to 7 and put a scare in the Lakers and put a lot of pressure to not be the first team to blow a 3-0 series lead. And I think the big thing with LA has just been they have not had the same level of energy or focus or intensity as the first 2 games. They have looked fatigued for much of the past 10 quarters. And the biggest problem with that is they're not getting a break anytime soon. They're going to practice tomorrow, then fly to Houston. Then they play Game 6 on Friday, and then they will fly back to Los Angeles. And if there is a Game 7, they would play on Sunday in LA. So it's now shifted from this point on to 1 day in between each game the rest of the way. And not only that, but also travel in between each of the games. So it's going now LA to Houston, and then the Lakers will be returning to LA, whether it's victorious after Game 6 and clinching the series, or if it's coming back for a Game 7. So the Lakers are in a bit of a bind right now. I really think a lot of the momentum has shifted to Houston side. They've been talking trash. They were talking trash before the game. They were talking trash during the game. They're talking trash after the game. And so far, they've backed it up. And you thought that coming off of the Game 4 performance and the way that fourth quarter went in terms of some of the chippiness, the way that the postgame went in terms of both sides getting into it, and then some of the comments from the Houston side, you thought that the Lakers would have more urgency tonight to close this out and not go to a Game 6. They had that to start the game. I thought it was a pretty good first quarter, definitely their best quarter since the first half of Game 3. But that second quarter malaise hit again. They've now had 4 of the 5 second quarters in this series have been somewhere between concerning and like really alarming how bad the Lakers have been in just the malaise that they get into in the second quarter, like right before halftime, more so like the second half of the second quarter. But like from that point on, like midway through the second quarter on, Houston was in firm control of this game. There was a couple moments where the Lakers had some life late and they got it to within 5 a couple times down the stretch, but just were not able to get over the hump. Houston would come up with a big steal, a big stop. Lakers would miss an open shot, miss an open 3, and they just couldn't get it closer than 5. And Houston, you have to give them credit for out executing LA down the stretch of this game. But shout out to the chat, shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate you all for tuning in despite the loss and despite how things have been trending these last couple of games. Let's get into the game though. So Buha's big picture is DEFCON level 2 concern. I'm not at DEFCON level 1. I know some fans are already at that spot, and I get it. If you want to be DEFCON level 1, that is your prerogative. I still think the Lakers are going to win this series. Again, I think there are 3 outcomes right now. Lakers 1-6, Lakers 1-7, Houston wins in 7. So just by nature of the 3 potential outcomes, the Lakers should be favored, right? And they have the 3-2 series lead. I think they've been the better team so far in this series for about 55% of the series, and that has translated to them having the 3-2 lead, which obviously is 60% correlation based on how much of the series has been played so far. But I would say the Lakers have been the better team for more of the series, but that gap has shrunk, right? If we looked at the first couple of games, even the first 2.5 games, I would say they were the better team for like 90% of the time through the first 10 quarters. Over the past 10 quarters, that has completely flipped, and it's been more so, I would say, like Houston 85% being the better team. And so I still give the Lakers a slight edge up to this point, and they have the edge in terms of the series standings. But Houston's been playing much better, and they are much more comfortable. They have more confidence, and the momentum, as I mentioned earlier, has entirely shifted to the Rockets side. And I think for those who picked the Rockets to win this series, or those picked the series to go the distance, or at least 6 or 7 games, like this was kind of what you were expecting more of. And yeah, I think it took Houston a while to figure out how to play and a bit to tire down the Lakers, but they have done it. And the Lakers have not had their legs. Looking at the last 10 quarters, the Lakers have scored 227 points, which equates to 22.7 points per quarter or 90.8 points per game. Now, it's not like the Houston Rockets are lighting it up offensively, but they've been defending the Lakers at a pretty high level, and then they've been doing just enough to maintain a lead. Yeah, obviously, the blowout in game 4, but they outplayed them second half of game 3 outside of a 12-second calamity, and then pretty much final 2.5 quarters of this one. So again, Houston has had this extended stretch here of controlling most of the recent play between these two teams. And I think for the Lakers offense, that's my biggest concern right now. I think the Lakers defense, even tonight, they held Houston to under 99. I've been jokingly saying that this is the Lawler's Law series where it's just first to 100 wins. Tonight, neither team got to 100, didn't matter. But Houston has figured out some things offensively. They still have their mind-numbing turnovers where Alperen Şengün kicks the ball ahead to Amen Thompson, who's running and not even looking back. The ball just sails out of bounds. They still have those types of turnovers. But from the Lakers side, they are beginning to look less intentional offensively. They are starting to look more like the aimless offense. And more concerningly, they're looking like the less capable offense right now. The Lakers have been the ones struggling to generate good looks. And when they are generating the good looks, they are missing layups. They are getting into the teeth of the defense, missing floaters. They are spraying the ball out, missing open threes. They missed so many momentous shots in that second half and in that fourth quarter. And just that combined to be some backbreakers for them. And, during that comeback attempt, I thought they looked gassed at times again tonight. Austin Reaves makes his return, plays 34 minutes. I was surprised by that, but based on the Lakers needed to win this game, or really at least wanted to win this game. So he played 34 minutes off the bench. JJ never gave clarity as to if there was a minutes restriction or not, but he started the second half in place of Luke Kennard, who really struggled tonight and has been trending in the wrong direction throughout this series. I thought Austin at times, and he talked about it after the game, he felt out of breath. And it's understandable. First game back after missing a month, but he clearly was not I think the same player in the second half compared to the first half, but he was not the only one. I think Marcus Smart has a big first quarter, big first half, has 8 points in the first quarter, 11 points in the first half, does not score the rest of the game. Luke Kennard held to 1 point, which was off of a free throw, 0 for 4 shooting. DA had a monster game. Rui hit a big three late, had some moments, but they've kind of neutralized Rui, putting Reed Shepherd on him and just kind of having him be a decoy, or LA trying to force things to Rui at times, but it just hasn't really clicked or worked. LeBron, I thought, was much better in the fourth quarter and started to get downhill and mismatch hunt and attack guys off the dribble. But he had an inefficient performance, shooting under 50%, going 0 for 6 on threes. And it's just like the Lakers have looked tired. And again, I think that it's one thing if there was like a couple games in between now and game 6, or a couple games in between 6 and 7. That's not the case. And the last time the Lakers had one day in between games, they got worked and did not have the legs basically from the jump in game 4. We'll see if they're able to conjure that in game 6. But I think the big thing to me has just been how much more comfortable and intentional Houston has looked over the past couple games. In my opinion, this was the best they looked playing with an advantage against the Lakers since maybe the Christmas game, maybe even all season, because the Christmas game, they dominated the offensive glass, they dominated transition, they dominated turnovers, and that was a slightly less half-court game than this one. But I thought the Rockets made the highest level of reads that they have made up to this point in the series. They played with patience and poise offensively, and they out-executed LA down the stretch of this game. Again, the Lakers had a couple of spurts where they made it interesting, got it to 5, and put some fear in Houston. And they're down like 6 or something with a minute 40 left, and I was like, well, we've seen this team come back from 6 against this team with 12 seconds, so anything is possible. But felt like the urgency, the Lakers started pressing and they started ramping up the ball pressure, and it was like, where was this earlier in the game where this game was really lost in the second and third quarters when Houston outscored them 55-39. Like, that's the game. LA outscored them in the first quarter. LA outscored them in the fourth quarter. Fourth quarter, some of that was the increased urgency and the pressing and some of Houston's turnovers. But this game was lost in the middle of the game. And that has been now, like, you go back to game 4, it was actually close in the first quarter. Houston closed the quarter strong and then started to distance themselves in that second quarter, blew the game open in the middle of the third. Go back to game 3. Lakers had a little bit of trouble down the stretch of that second quarter, but like they still had a lead. And then third quarter is when Houston flipped it and made it a game going to the fourth, and then ended up nearly winning it. It goes, they collapse, it goes to overtime, and the Lakers beat them. So I think the Lakers have to reevaluate some things. I think one of the things we talked about coming off of game 4 was there were some micro adjustments that the Lakers could make, but you didn't want to overreact to what had worked through the first 3 games, and you were still in control, you were still in charge, and you were dictating the terms of engagement. I think that's flipped now. I think Houston is the team that they're still behind in the series, to be clear, but I think Houston has been more the team dictating the terms of engagement. I think the Lakers need to take a long and hard look at making some bigger adjustments going into game 6 and, again, potentially game 7. But I mean, tonight, I do have to note, like, I don't like blaming just shot luck, but I do think the Lakers missed a ton of good looks, especially in that fourth quarter. There were several shots tonight that, especially like where I was sitting in 117, my vantage point is almost the like direct sight line with the basket. So it is interesting sometimes, like seeing some of the makes and misses that roll around. And there were several looks tonight that I was like sure were going in that rolled around the rim and just rolled out, and like just some really tough misses for the Lakers. Now, that's going to happen. They overperformed from a shooting perspective in the first couple games. They have come back down to earth these last 3 games overall, and I think they're actually due for some positive luck in terms of their shooting. But they can't just rely on, well, we're going to shoot better. Like I think the process has to be better, and they somehow have to figure out a way to get less tired, because again, with how much, I mean, every starter played 31 minutes tonight. Austin played 34 off the bench. This was the shortest leash that JJ had with the bench outside of the top 6 guys. Jackson played 10 minutes. Jake played 9. Vando played 6. Bronny did not play. So the Lakers are also, I think, going to have to potentially think about reworking the rotation, finding ways with how rough of a game Jackson had and how rough of a game 4 he had as well, and how well DA played. I understood the big split there between those two, but I think you need more than 15 combined minutes from Jake and Vando. I know neither one of them necessarily warranted playing more tonight, but just in terms of fatigue, like I think we saw in the second half and the fourth quarter, it just was much more difficult for guys to make shots, attack closeouts, make rotations, box out, etc. And that stuff has been adding up throughout the course of the series. And from like a war of attrition perspective, I think Houston's been wearing the Lakers down. And the combination of LA not looking physically right collectively, coupled with the just offensive rut that they've been in for the past 10 quarters, that right now is what's driving the concern for me, more so than even they lost 2 in a row, or they haven't been playing their best basketball right now. Like that's all part of it too. But to me, it's like the offense has just looked bad for most of the past 10 quarters, and they are just looking very tired right now. And it feels like some of the physical matchups they were winning earlier in the series against Houston have not been going the same way. And Houston has now been more of the team dictating the terms of engagement. They're beating the Lakers to loose balls more. They're the team attacking the closeouts, getting downhill, and putting the Lakers on their heels. They've been getting to the free throw line a ton over the last couple games. So there's a lot for LA to clean up. I think in general, the Lakers are going to need even more from LeBron and Austin. I know with Austin, first game back, so you give him some grace. He was thrown into the fire after missing a month. LeBron bounced back relatively to his performances in Houston, where he had 16 combined turnovers in those 2 games, had his worst game maybe of the season in game 4. Much better performance tonight, but I think they're going to need even more. Those guys combined for 47 points on 13 of 36 shooting. They're going to need, I think, those guys collectively to shoot 50+% and probably drop 55 to 60 points combined to pull out a game 6 or a game 7. I think those guys need to be, and I start with those guys because those are clearly the 2 best offensive players, the 2 best players on the team available right now. So I think it starts at the top, but then you look at they need more from Rui. They need more from Marcus. They need a lot more from Luke. And I think those 3 guys combined for 24 points tonight. I think you need at least 35 to 40 from those 3. And then DA, it's hard to quibble. Like early in the game, he was getting stripped and blocked and missing layups. And that was basically, all of his misses. But after that point, I mean, defensively, he held up. The rebounding, 10 offensive rebounds. He was a beast on the glass, had a big tip dunk late, and I mean, nearly had a 20-20 performance. So really not much to nitpick with DA. And then the bench was just non-existent between Jackson, Jake, and Vando. Like all 3 of those guys look like they should not be on the floor, but you just can't play 6 guys unless it's the second half of game 4 against Minnesota, but then you play 5. But yeah, I mean, I think the Lakers need more from a lot of guys right now, and at least I'm more so looking at that top 6 because I don't think I'm not going to say, well, the Lakers need more from Vando or Jake or Jackson, and like that's the reason why they lost this game. I think it starts with your best players, and I think all of them, with the exception of maybe DA. Like DA might be the one guy you there are some things with the turnovers and the going up stronger and whatever that you could critique if you want to, but outside of DA, I don't think anyone else had like an A- game. And they need a couple of these guys to at least hit an A- level. And yeah, so I mean, that's where I'm at right now. I am concerned. I'm probably on a scale of 1 to 10. I know I said I'm DEFCON level 2. I would say scale of 1 to 10, probably 7.5. I'm like, if they lose game 6, I think that goes to a 9. And then it's just, you are one random performance, one sprained ankle away from the biggest collapse in NBA history. But I think that's putting the cart in front of the horse. The Lakers are still in the driver's seat. They just have to take control of the wheel. And they've been letting Houston dictate the physicality, the terms of engagement, the pace. Houston has been controlling the show the last couple games. Lakers need to grab the steering wheel back from them and bring this one home, close this out in 6. You don't want to go to 7. And if only, I still think the Lakers would be like slight favorites on a game 7, but at that point, you're just putting so much more tread on your tires. To keep with the car analogies here, you are just, you're putting yourself in a really bad position going into the OKC series of how much you've had to rely on your key guys, how much those guys look worn down and tired. And that's not a spot you want to be going into a buzzsaw of an OKC series, likely without Luka Doncic to start, or at least for the first couple games. So the Lakers, it's very imperative that they change things up, close this out in 6. If they don't, I still would favor them in 7, but anything could happen into game 7. And at that point, Houston has won 3 in a row. All the momentum is decidedly on their side, and you just don't really want to be in that position. But let's get into the notable performers section here. All right. So, I mean, I touched on some of this in the big picture segment, but we'll hop through it. We'll start with LeBron, 25 points, 3 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 steals, 2 turnovers, 9 for 20 shooting, 0 for 6 on threes, 7 for 10 at the free throw line. I thought LeBron led the charge in the fourth quarter and was aggressively targeting Reed Shepherd and Alperen Şengün in the 2-man game, running pick and rolls to get one of those two switched onto him. And then if it was Şengün, just beating him off of the dribble. If it was Reed, trying to turn it into an extended post up and then pass and play make out of that. I thought he was much better than game 4, but I thought that the middle portion, like I thought he had a good first quarter and a good fourth quarter and was not as strong in the middle portion of the game. Like did do a much better job taking care of the ball, 2 turnovers compared to he had, I believe 5 in the first 2 games, 16 in Houston across those 2 games and 2 tonight. So much better job taking care of the ball. Also, I thought, like, I think one of the underrated things with LeBron's series so far has been his switching. Like when he switches onto Şengün, in particular, he holds his own, but he's also had some possessions where he's switching out onto Reed and sort of blitzing him solo and forcing him to retreat. So I've really liked LeBron's defense in that sense of just switching into different matchups. He's obviously been primarily matched up with Okogie, Thompson, Smith, Eason. Like he's rotating among those 4 guys depending on the assignments and just the configuration for LA. But I thought it was a solid game for LeBron. I would have liked to, again, I think in the middle portion, I would have liked to have seen him take a little bit more control. I do think he's maybe the player who's looked the most tired, or at least we've seen the most physical decline over the last couple games compared to the first couple games. I think game 1 and game 2 LeBron was much fresher compared to this version of him. I guess you could throw Marcus in there. And then Luke, I think part of the Luke stuff is fatigue. I think part of it's just Amen Thompson. I mean, it was what we talked about before the series. If I'm Houston, I just say, Amen Thompson, go take Luke Kennard out. And took them a couple games to figure that out, but since then he's done a great job against Luke Kennard and basically neutralized him from the series. Especially last 2 games, he's combined for 8 points and just has not been anywhere close to the start of the series. So I thought LeBron was solid tonight, but I think that they're going to need at least in one of these final 2 games an even bigger performance. I think they're going to need his best game of the series to close this thing out, and we'll see where he's at physically. I thought he'd have a big game 5. Again, it was a bounce back. It was probably his 3rd best game of the series, I would say, after the first couple, but I think they need even more. And I think the key needs to be like finding, I don't even know if you can find a way to get him more of a break, because I just don't think this team could afford to have LeBron off the floor for more than 8 or 9 minutes. But I think he's someone that if I'm the Lakers, I'm trying to figure out how can I get him more energy and just I don't know if he's in the cryo chamber for like 6 hours or something, but they got to figure something out with that, because I think there's been a war of attrition with him to some degree. Then DA, mentioned it earlier, but 18 points, 17 rebounds, 10 offensive rebounds. He was a beast tonight. A couple blocks, 9 for 14 shooting. I thought a bit of a mixed bag to start the game, where there was a couple lob passes that he did not convert on, a couple of dump off deep seals where he's getting stripped or just kind of going up finesse and missing. One time I think Jabari Smith blocked him. But outside of that, like that was the first few minutes of the game. From then on, he was just awesome. And this might have been, I mean, I probably would argue it was his best game of the series. And it's unfortunate for the Lakers that they kind of wasted DeAndre's best game of the series. But now I would say he's played well in 3 of the 5 games. And I would say he had 1 stinker, 1 okay game, and then 3 solid to good games, or maybe a solid game and 2 good games. And so like DA has been, I think he's been holding up his end of the bargain of what LA has needed. I think the one-on-one defense has been there against Şengün. Şengün tonight only took 9 shots. A big part of that was LA selling out against him and swarming him and sending doubles. But he also had 8 assists to that, though you could also throw in the 5 turnovers. But DA did his job tonight and has largely done his job this series. Marcus, it looked like it was going to be a Marcus game. It looked like early on he scored 8 quick points for LA. I think it was like 8 of the first 10 or 12 for LA. Hit 1 open 3, 1 kind of contested, sort of ridiculous 3, which just is part of the Marcus package. Then hit another 3 in the second quarter, but didn't score the rest of the game. And I think one thing that really stood out with Marcus tonight was the turnovers. This was one of his, I mean, 6 turnovers is high, and that I would assume is maybe like maybe he's had a 7 or 8 turnover game, but 6 is up there for maybe his season high or second highest, whatever. But there's a lot of costly turnovers. It was a lot of momentous turnovers in terms of maybe LA having, like LA creating an advantage in the half court, or even sometimes being in the back court and Marcus just turning the ball over. And 6 turnovers to 2 assists, like that, they have shifted in terms of Marcus, like knowing all of his shots tonight actually were threes. He did not take 1 2-pointer, got to the free throw line. So I think one of those, if I'm remembering correctly, was the shot he drew the foul on was inside the arc. But in terms of actual registered field goals, Marcus did not attempt a 2-pointer tonight. And I think Houston's done a great job of playing him for the pass and knowing that if Marcus is driving, his first instinct is going to be to pass. It's either going to be the lob, it's going to be the dump off, or it's going to be a kick out. And then option number 4 for Marcus is throwing up some sort of floater or trying to grift his way to the free throw line. And I think Houston's done a great job of playing his passing lanes and playing his reads. And his reads have kind of become predictable. And there's a lot of, you kind of see the read and Marcus goes to throw it and Houston anticipates it and gets the steal, or they're getting a lot of deflections and sometimes the Lakers can recover those, but his decision-making and turnovers have been really problematic these last few games. And I think the culmination of that was tonight, where it reached an all-time low of 6 turnovers to 2 assists for the guy who, at least with the starting group, is supposed to be the primary ball handler and initiator into getting LeBron the ball, into getting LA to run their offense, and just didn't do that tonight. Also, no stocks tonight for Marcus. I think he was solid defensively, but just not quite the same. Like, I would say this is probably his worst defensive game as well. So you couple in the turnovers, the quiet second half, did not score in the second half, the lack of playmaking, and just his defense not being up to par, and easily his worst game of the series. But I would say, like, for him as a starter, probably one of his worst games as a starter, but just one of his worst games of the season. I think, just like straight up. Speaking of worst games of the season, Luke Kennard, 1 point, 0 for 4 shooting, 0 for 2 on threes, did get to the free throw line in the second half, made 1 of 2, which for him is obviously not good enough. 3 rebounds, 2 assists, 2 steals, and a block. I think the 3 stocks were all in the first half for whatever that's worth. But I mean, they were targeting him a ton. They've continued to target him. They've had a lot of success targeting him. He has been able to make some plays and get out there. I liked some of his pressure against Reed Shepherd and Amen Thompson, the kind of pressuring them towards half court. But I mean, Luke has just been taken out of the series, and I think a lot of the Luke chatter of how much the Lakers should be paying him, or that he's better than Austin Reaves, or he should be he should replace Reaves. I think that stuff got completely out of control. And if you look at he's progressively played worse in each of the 5 games. I mean, just from a scoring perspective, 27 points, 23 points, 14, 7, 1. From a shooting perspective, 69, 62, 33, 38, 0. And the assists have been trending the wrong way. The rebounds have been trending the wrong way. He got benched in the second half, at least to start. I wasn't quite sure what happened. I know the Lakers are trying to find some time for Marcus to rest, but he rested an extended period there in the fourth where they had Luke out there, and I thought that kind of hurt them. But yeah, Luke, I mean, I don't want to say it was fool's gold necessarily the first couple games, but over the last, he scored 27 in game 1. He has 22. Well, let's even take a step. 27 in game 1 and 23 in game 2. He has 22 total over the past 3 games. So he has not reached his game 1 or game 2 total in the last 3 games combined. And his confidence looks shot. Amen Thompson has just taken him out, and he is turning down good looks again. Like, this is some of the worst habits with Luke from earlier in the season, and just frankly for most of his career have been not being aggressive enough and not shooting unless he's completely wide open, which if it's on the scouting report, like this dude, it was shooting 72% on threes through the first 2 games. We got to take this guy out. And that's what Houston's done. And so he's not made a 3 over the past couple games, shot 17% on threes in game 3. And I don't think he's going to play this poorly for the rest of the series, but it's been a combination of like, they've been able to take him out with Amen Thompson and Josh Okogie, and then they've also been targeting him relentlessly on the defensive end. And that combination, it's becoming difficult to play Luke. Like, he's out there as a decoy, he's out there as a floor spacer, but it's like he's not contributing offensively, and then he's also getting picked on defensively. That's a problematic combination that I think if the Lakers are to win this in 6 or 7, Luke will have to shake loose and doesn't even have to have a big offensive performance, but it's got to hit a few shots. It's got to hit a couple threes and just make an impact offensively. Then buried the lead here a bit, but off the bench, Austin Reaves made his 2026 postseason debut. 22 points, 4 for 16 shooting, 2 for 8 on threes, 12 for 13 at the free throw line, 4 rebounds, 6 assists, a block, 3 turnovers. And thought it was, all things considered, based on Austin missing as much time as he missed, I thought tonight was a relative success. Now, 4 for 16 shooting is bad. There's no way around that. He was 2 for 8 on threes, so he was 2 for 8 inside the arc as well. Because one thing with Austin is sometimes when he has a bad shooting performance, it'll be the 2 for 8 on threes, but he's at least around like 50% inside the arc. That was not the case tonight. 2 for 8 on 2s, 2 for 8 on 3s. Both of those not good enough. I think the 3-point shooting, it's a little bit more understandable based on how many minutes he played, how tired he looked in the second half, and just his absence of a month. The 2-point shooting is a little bit trickier, where he missed, I want to say off the top of my head, like 3 layups tonight that he normally makes. And I don't know if that was Houston speeding him up or him just kind of being sped up, being thrown into the crucible of the playoffs. But I thought the positives tonight were the innings eating with him as a ball handler. Like, he enters midway through the first quarter. Immediately the offense is running entirely through Austin, and gave the Lakers a boost. He had 8 points and 3 assists, or 8 points and 2 assists in the first quarter. And I thought definitely provided some juice for the offense. And like, looking at Austin versus Marcus or versus Luke tonight from a ball handling perspective, there was not a lot with Luke. He got phased into being more of an off-ball guy. But I thought the Lakers generated a lot of good looks, and He was feeding DA early. He had a lob attempt that DA wasn't able to connect on, but had some nice entry passes into DA, a couple of nice passes to him on the roll. And so I thought he gave the Lakers offense some dynamism, some verve. It's been too long since I've used that word. And I thought he overall helped more than he hurt tonight. Now, the other positive was the free throw shooting. And we saw some dark arts of foul drawing, a little bit of grifting with Austin tonight. But that's just part of his offensive repertoire, and it worked. He came in and immediately he got fouled on a three by, I think it was Jabari Smith, and just extends his arms. And like he was a foul magnet tonight in terms of drawing fouls on the Rockets. And I think that was another component. Like the Lakers were still getting to the free throw line a decent amount. Marcus had some of that earlier in the series, but look at the starting group. Look at the entire rotation. The Lakers shot 27 free throws tonight. 23 of those came from Austin and LeBron. The rest of the group combined to shoot 4 free throws. So the Lakers have needed someone to come in, handle the ball, assume some usage, run the show, and get to the free throw line, get downhill, run pick and roll. I thought the Lakers pick and roll attack looked better tonight for stretches up until I would say like that late portion of the third into the fourth. So I thought I liked a lot of what Austin did. He was clearly out of rhythm to some degree. The shot was not quite there. The legs were not quite there. But I think I would say he played better than my expectations for him coming into tonight. I thought he'd be somewhere in the mid-20s from a minutes perspective. And I did a segment on ESPN LA radio earlier today, and he was talking about Austin and what to expect. I was like, if he gives the Lakers like 14 points, and a few assists and gives them like 25 minutes and some ball handling, I think that's a win. I thought he did even more than that tonight, though he's going to need the jumper to fall, and he needs to be converting at the rim. Those are, again, the threes I can kind of, chalk it up to legs not quite there, missed a month. Okay. But some of the layups, I think that stuff has to be sharper, especially with their lack of rim protection. It's either Şengün or small ball. Either way, Austin should be finishing easier. Defensively, I thought he held up fine. Like they targeted him a bunch, and he took a couple big hits. I mean, he picked up a flagrant foul against Tari Eason, getting hit from the back. But I thought on switches, he held up fine in terms of them trying. Like Amin Thompson kept trying to target him, and I thought there was a couple times he got by Austin, but he held up fine. There was some stuff with the low man rotations, some of the help defense where I thought that could have been sharper or better. But I think for a guy missing a month and then being thrown into a playoff series, he did about as well as reasonably possible outside of, I think, some of the finishing at the rim, especially for him, based on he's a good finisher for a guard. That stuff can be better, and I think will be better moving forward. In terms of stat of the night, there's a couple here, so we'll stay on this page for a second. 7 for 27 three-point shooting for the Lakers. They shot just 26%. Contrast that with Houston, 14 of 40, 35%. So Houston made 7 more threes, but they also attempted 13, and they kind of swung the math in their favor. Over half of Houston's attempts tonight were threes, and Houston has been leading more into that. And part of that was also the Lakers' defensive scheme tonight. We could look at LA's 106.3 offensive rating, which just isn't good enough. But I will point out the 15 turnovers compared to Houston's 11 turnovers, and LA conceding 18 points off of those 15 turnovers. That was a swing factor of, you see 4 more turnovers, a +5 margin in terms of points conceded off of turnovers, and Houston won the fast break battle. Like the Lakers won the rebounding battle. They more than doubled Houston's offensive rebounding. Houston has been far more conservative with crashing and focusing on getting back and eliminating LA's transition offense. They won the possession battle. They took 1 more shot than Houston for the first time all series. They took more free throws than Houston. So you look at that, and I think a big thing tonight was the shot profile, where LA attempts 1 more shot than Houston, but because of Houston hitting 7 more threes and really shifting the math in their favor, they ultimately prevailed. And then you also factor in the turnovers, points off turnovers, etc. And then 3 quick takeaways, and we'll get into the Q&A. So takeaway number one is some game 6 adjustments. Now, I have not done my game 5 rewatch. I will be doing that tomorrow during either the morning or at some point during the day. So I'm sure there'll be some more things. I'm planning on doing an episode tomorrow evening with Raj Chapalu, and we'll talk through game 6 adjustments, game 5 rewatch, and basically what I've been doing in between each game, but now doing it with a guest because I think that'll be more fun and interesting. But some quick things just off the top of my head and based on my notes throughout the game. I think start Austin, move Luke to the bench. I mean, they did that in the second half, but I think Austin, for as some of his struggles tonight, whether it was the legs, the conditioning, the finishing, still was just much better than Luke, I think, on both sides of the ball. And I think the moving forward should be starting Austin. I thought it would take maybe a couple games, give Luke, keep him in the starting group, keep that group going. But I mean, they made that adjustment in the second half. So I would expect moving forward, Austin to be back to being the starter. But I mean, that's a low hanging fruit adjustment, in my opinion. I'm torn on what to do with the bench because I have two conflicting things here. I'm like, condense the bench even more, but I don't know that you can because again, like the way that things have been trending, which I mean, Jake has had a rough series offensively. I think he's largely been fine defensively and on the glass, but I thought tonight was not even up to his standards for the series, and he only played 9 minutes. Vando had probably his worst shift or one of his worst shifts of the series. Lakers got crushed in his minutes. He only played 6 minutes. And then Jackson had, has had back-to-back rough games here. And I would say it's been subpar in probably 3 of the 5 games up to this point in the series. So it's like, I just don't really know what you do. And it feels like some of the concerns we had with the Lakers coming into the season, more so than lately, or more so than coming into this series, have started to rear their head. And what I mean specifically is one of the big knocks on this Lakers team throughout the course of the season has been the lack of depth. And I think you're starting to see that now, where it feels like they're barely at like 6 playable guys. Like I think some of these guys have to play just because you can't play 6 guys for a full playoff game. But if there were more options or better options, I think these guys would not be playing. And I don't know, for example, I mean, looking at what you're getting from, I mean, DFS outplayed Jake tonight, which I thought there was some like cruel irony in that, with how obviously Jake's been the better player for the entirety of the season and the better value contract. But like, I thought DFS had some good, a couple decent shifts for them and hit a couple threes. I mean, comparing the benches, you're not getting like, I mean, I think Okogie's been better, or tonight was better than anybody else on the Lakers bench. I'm putting Austin aside here, and I also think he's going to be a starter. But I mean, Holiday and Finney-Smith, they aren't playing like great, but I do think they've outplayed at least Jake and Vando over the last couple of games. Vando had a good fourth quarter in game 4, but I just think the Lakers are in a tough spot where on one hand, I want to condense the bench. On one hand, I'm like, you got to find more minutes for the bench. So I don't know where they're going to find that. But this is where, I mean, again, right now, it's like there's 6 playable guys, and you could even argue one of the guys in Luke has not really been playable the past couple of games. So the Lakers are in a bit of a bind in terms of just the rotation decisions right now. I thought it was interesting that they took Bronny out of the rotation, and part of me is like, with Aaron Holiday playing in the rotation and Houston playing small ball, and then also Jake and Vando struggling offensively and Luke also struggling offensively, can you find a shift maybe for Bronny based on how he performed in the 2 Houston games? I'm not saying that's going to swing a quarter or swing even a shift, but we're at the point where, you need to try different things. And I feel like clearly there's been a limitation to Vando and Jake's offensive impact. And I did like some of the progress we saw from Bronny in games 3 and 4. Now, I think based on the hierarchy of the team, Jake and Vando will still be ahead of him, and they'll at least get the crack in terms of getting a shot in the rotation ahead of him. But I don't think you can afford to play spots 7 to 9 in your rotation a combined 25 minutes. I just think it needs to be a little bit more. And again, I don't even blame JJ necessarily, because I think those guys were all so underwhelming tonight. But if those guys aren't going to perform, then give someone else a shift to just see how they perform. And I think you can't just play 6 guys. It's not going to work. And those guys just don't have the legs. I think they need to help less against Şengün with Ayton specifically. I think with Jackson, you could send the doubles, you could swarm. And even with Ayton, you swarm beyond a certain point. And one of the things I'd said in terms of adjustments going to this game was like, I thought they should be sending these blindside doubles. And I don't think they did a good job with that tonight. It was a lot of choreographed doubles. It was a lot of visible doubles where, sometimes if he's in the post, you could send the baseline double, and Houston has been better passing out of that, but not great passing out of that. But some of these, like, especially when Şengün's at the elbow or he's at the 3-point line extended, I think some of those doubles, you're just asking LA's defense to cover too much ground. And I don't think that's a sustainable or smart approach. So I think when Ayton's in there, just let him play Şengün one-on-one. But obviously, if Şengün is scoring on him or he's covering ground from like 18 feet to 10 feet to 8 feet, then you could send the backside double. But I think LA was sending too many sideways doubles and too many front doubles, and it allowed Şengün to pick them apart or at least kick the ball back out, reset, and then go into creating an advantage out of that. I think they got to continue to hunt Reed and Şengün even more. I think Reed has been playing much better these last 3 games since returning into a prominent role in the rotation after game 2. But they're Houston putting Reed on Rui has been a bit of a game changer because it has taken Rui out of things kind of in terms of he hasn't been as impactful as he was earlier in the series. But then it's also allowing Reed to just chill and hang on the court defensively. And then offensively, he's an integral part of their offense in terms of bringing the ball up, getting into their sets, initiating, ball handling, passing, shooting. He didn't have a good shooting night tonight, just 5 for 12, 2 for 7. But that's been a big X factor, in my opinion, has been Reed going from playing 11 minutes in game 2 to now being a 30-plus minute a night guy. Part of that's because KD's out, but they've also allowed it in a way that I think they really got to target him even more. Continue to target Şengün in the pick and roll. And I think they got to do a better job with ball pressure in terms of trying to force Houston turnovers. And I think they were better tonight against Amen Thompson on the ball, but in general, LA's ball pressure has been worse, in my opinion, progressively throughout the series. I think part of that's fatigue, but they got to find a way to pick that up. Offensively, I liked some of the stuff they did with the empty side pick and rolls and going to more of that with combinations of Austin and DA, Austin and LeBron, LeBron and Austin, LeBron and DA. I think with those 3 guys, you can run some empty corner pick and roll and 2-man game on one side and then space the floor with 3 shooters on the other side, right? And I liked some of the actions we saw. I do think Austin will progressively look better throughout the course of the series, or at least should. And I just think that the Lakers have to do a better job of really just taking care of the ball, playing like if they have 12 turnovers tonight instead of 15, and if they had 17 turnovers instead of 24 in game 4, we're talking about 2 completely different games. And so the unforced errors, the getting sped up, the wild forays into transition basketball and early offense basketball, they just got to clean that stuff up. I think the primary culprit has been Marcus, but everyone, LeBron has had some of those turnovers, particularly in Houston. Austin got picked at half court by Amen Thompson and had another one that he nearly got picked, but it ended up being a kicked ball. So the Lakers have really struggled with ball pressure in this series, and if they somehow advance, they will get one of the best ball pressure teams of all time in OKC. So that's going to be a significant challenge. Then takeaway number 2 is I think one thing that we have to start discussing here, and going to be curious to talk more about this with Raj tomorrow, is KD's potential return, because I think that is now hanging over everything. Of Houston is kind of gassed themselves, right? Like they're younger, they're more athletic, but they're playing heavy minutes. Amen Thompson played 46 minutes tonight. Şengün played 43. I feel like every time they come out of a timeout or quarter break, I'm like, who's on the floor? It's always somehow Şengün, Thompson, and Smith are like always on the floor for Houston. They just never come off the floor. And so that could catch up to Houston too. But if you parachute in Kevin Durant into all of this and his high 30s or even 40-ish minutes, like that's going to take away some of the DFS and Okogie and Holiday minutes, which I think is a win for Houston. And it's really going to balance out their big lineup with Şengün and then their smaller lineups in terms of small ball centerless. So he's not been ruled out yet for the rest of the series. It seems like he's day-to-day right now, and we'll see if he can play on Friday or potentially Sunday. But I think it can go obviously one of two ways, where KD can return, fit into what they're doing, and just amplify it and help propel them to maybe a game 6 win going back to LA, or maybe a game 7 win in LA, or he can undo their process, their progress and their process, because we have seen him struggle against this Lakers defense and the trapping. And I would assume Houston, I will give credit where credit's due. Houston's done a much better job, I think, with their scouting and their adjustments the last couple of games. So I would assume that they do a better job if KD is returning at some point here. But that's a wild card to me. Like, that right now is the biggest X factor the rest of the series. Is they could just add like a 25 point per game scorer, one of the best scorers and shooters of all time, into what they're doing. And it can go haywire, but it could also just propel and amplify everything. And that is dangerous territory for the Lakers right now. And then takeaway number 3, this is going to be a quick one, but I think the downside to how things are playing out right now, and this is, look, like the Lakers have to take care of this series first and foremost. They have to survive. They have to advance. And that needs to be the focus here over the next few days. But the Lakers have now had 2 opportunities to close this team out. And whether they close them out in 4 or close them out in 5, they would have had a multi-day break to prepare for OKC. And I think been going into a Sunday game 1. Now it does feel like that this next series, if they advance, will be pushed into early to mid next week, depending on when other series end and just how the NBA schedules the second round, which we don't have the dates yet. But I would say that based on everything we've seen in this series and based on the way that the Lakers have been trending, I was already concerned with the OKC series, so I don't want to act like this is a new thing or revision, recency bias. Like, I've been concerned with OKC, but the version of LA that we've seen the last 2 games in particular is getting waxed by this OKC team, and it's not going to be close. And if you look at their ball pressure, their turnover forcing, their athleticism, and also Shea being far better than anyone on Houston offensively, I think at this point, including KD, like the current version of KD, it's just that like they're a team that's going to punish your doubling, your swarming, your aggressive style offensively, or defensively, and then offensively, they're going to ball pressure you. They're going to be picking you up 94 feet. They're going to be picking you in the backcourt. They're going to be picking you at half court. And I think for the Lakers to have gone into the OKC series in the best possible standing and shape, I think they had to close the series out quickly. I think now they're going to be hobbling and fatigued going into an OKC series, again, assuming they advance. And that is an assumption at this point. We don't know that's going to happen for sure. So I think the biggest downside to all of this, outside of just putting more fatigue and tread on their tires and risking an injury potentially in game 6, like a sprained ankle to someone, changes the Lakers, the rest of the postseason for them. Now I think it's like you are really wearing yourself down going into an OKC series where they do not make the same mental mistakes as Houston. They are a much better team on both sides of the ball. They're going to present much more difficult challenges on both sides of the ball. And I think LA needs to close this out in 6, because if you go 7, you just continue to kind of risk injury, risk fatigue, and you're putting yourself in a really tough position potentially going into round 2. Now, I know, again, the focus needs to be winning game 6, and if not, winning game 7. But I do feel like this is one of the unintended downsides to how this situation is unfolding right now. Is I think the Lakers are putting themselves in a tough spot going into round 2 if they can advance to round 2. But with all that said, let's get into Q&A here. Before we do, A quick shout out to Cozy Earth for sponsoring today's show. I'm on here talking basketball, watching games, looking at numbers, grinding film. But what about when you need some downtime? You want to be comfortable. You want to be cozy. And that is where Cozy Earth comes in. They got robes and slippers built for all those quiet moments, like relaxing after a long work day or just kicking back and watching a game. And with Mother's Day coming up, this is actually a great gift idea because it's not just a random gift. It's something that she's actually going to use every day. The robes are super soft. They have multiple styles, and the slippers are built to be worn all day, not just around the house for a few minutes. And the best part is you can try it risk-free. They have an 100-night trial and a 10-year warranty, so you're not really taking a risk here. And so if you're looking for a thoughtful gift for yourself or a mother in your life, go to cozyearth.com and use code BUHA for 20% off. That's code BUHA for 20% off. And if there's a survey after you check out, just let them know you came from the show, Buha's Block. Because at the end of the day, home starts with mom. All right, shout out to Cozy Earth. Let's get into the Q&A here. First one from Gary Singh. Thank you for the super chat. Don't understand JJ. Aiton was guarding Şengün great, yet he still sends help to double him and leave rocket shooters wide open. Everyone got into flow. Yeah, this was a big talking point after the game, and I would like to rewatch the game and go over the film to give you a better perspective on this. But off the top of my head, I mean, I think there has been an element of Houston for the entirety of the series, right? Like they've been playing better with advantages and playing better against LA's doubles and shading and helping and whatnot. But Houston, I mean, even tonight, they had several turnovers where you double, you say like they're a team that can kind of crash out or spaz out a bit, and you throw different looks at them, and sometimes they will misread the situation or they will kind of freak out and try to. I think guys are so nervous about potentially committing a turnover that it actually ends up making them commit more turnovers. So there's a bit of a cat and mouse game here in terms of the doubling and the helping, and also cajoling rocket shooters to shoot more, right? And like JJ talked about that the Lakers on their scouting report have lasers and they have tasers. Lasers are the elite shooters you do not want to get open. So on Houston, that is Reed Shepherd and Jabari Smith. Those are the two guys you do not want to leave any daylight. You don't want to help off of. You don't want to rotate off of. You need to remain with both those guys. Like you do not want those guys heating up. And all things considered, they combined to shoot 6 for 16 on threes tonight. And I think that's a win for LA's defense, relatively. But he highlighted that Amen Thompson is a taser, and a taser is the opposite of a laser. A taser is a guy you want to shoot. Now, Amen Thompson hit a couple of big corner threes tonight. Didn't have the most efficient game, but he has progressively been playing better and better and making his imprint on this series. So I think there's a balance within it, but certainly I think LA shifted and tilted far too aggressively with the help and losing track of some of these guys. And I think a part of it too is like you see with Houston is aggressively helping a lot of times, but their athletes are able to stunt or rotate over and then get back to their man and force, prevent a shot or at least have a contested shot, maybe force them to put the ball on the ground and try to drive or take a pull-up jumper or something. And so part of it too, I think, is the overall lack of athleticism from LA defensively, but also some of the fatigue compounding here for LA defensively. So I'm with you. I think it should be more. I mean, that was one of my game 6 adjustments. One of the things I highlighted earlier in the show. I think they have to be guarding Şengün more one-on-one. Now, I think there are times where with how he will attack out of the post, you can hit him with a blindside double and try to attack from behind, poke the ball loose. I think Houston's actually had some success with that against the Lakers in the post and on drives. I think the Lakers can mimic some of that against Houston and against Şengün specifically. But with how they were doubling him, it was a lot of him just being able to make reads, and he made a lot of high level reads. Kudos to him. I also think, though, we have to remember, like, some of this stuff worked for the Lakers in the first couple games, but so, like, I understand the process to some degree. It even worked in parts of game 3, but you also have to be able to adjust, right? And that's where I think LA, it's okay if you test out certain things that have previously worked in the series or previously worked in the season series against Houston. It's, can you adjust out of that quicker and not make some of those reads as predictable? And that's where I think LA fell short tonight. So I think that's a low-hanging fruit where LA can clean that up. Let Şengün beat DA off the dribble in the post in the middle of the floor. He's done it at times. Like, he typically scores on him like 2 or 3 times a game, but you can live with that. What you can't live with is the cutting angles that come out of this, the offensive rebounding angles that come out of this, the corner threes that come out of this, the blender that it starts for LA's defense. That there's a lot of complexity that comes out of some of the way that they're defending Şengün, and I think they need to simplify it a little bit. Just be like, yo, Ayton, you got this. You're bigger than him. You're longer than him. You're just as strong as him, or it's relatively similar. Like, he's done a fine job, I would say, one-on-one versus Şengün. Just let him do his thing and force the other guys to beat you in other ways rather than this. Cage Britt, thank you for the super chat. It's just basketball at the end of the day. ... I understand what this means, and I'm sorry. But look, Lakers are still up 3-2 in the series. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom right now, and things are trending in Houston's favor, but make no mistake, like, I think the Lakers are still in the driver's seat. Now, if they lose game 6, all bets are off. Anything can happen in a game 7. And again, Houston would have all the momentum at that point, all the confidence, even more so than right now. But the Lakers could easily, like, if you look at the way the series has gone, the Rockets are favored in the first 3 games. And I think technically the first 4, but I think it was like, everyone was waiting for Houston to win, right? People thought Houston would win game 1. Then they thought they'd win game 2 with KD back. Then it was like, well, there's no way they go down 3-0. Then it was like, okay, Lakers are probably going to sweep them based on how the series has gone. Houston wins. Then you have game 5 tonight, where it's like, okay, LA will close out. They'll bounce back from game 4. That's not been the case. So maybe LA goes into Houston and beats them. But that could be how it goes, but we just don't know. And right now, I think my biggest concern is just the fatigue, quite frankly. PRJ KT, thank you for the super chat. What the actual FK was Smart doing out there today? Really rough Marcus Smart performance, and it does show. Like, we've talked about Marcus's value and his potential contract, Luke's value, his potential contract, and this stuff can flip game to game. Like, the conversations, I mean, we were talking about, could Luke be a double-digit millions guy after game 2? Could Luke be somewhere in that like $12 to $15 million range? I think a lot of his goodwill that he built up through the first couple games, it's been neutralized, if not now turned more toward a negative in this series. And so it's like, I'm not saying he's like a minimum player, but I think previously going to the postseason, we were talking about him more as like maybe an $8 to $10 million player, and that might be more of his actual range. Maybe 12, but like the 15, or I think it gotten some super chats about, is Luke going to make 20 million or is Luke going to make 30 million? Like, with the series he's had now, I would say firmly no. And I think it's reaffirmed that, like, he's a good role player, but he's a role player. He's more of a bench player than a starter, and he can be taken out of his game against more physical, athletic defenders. And that's what we've seen so far up the series. Like, he had 50 points in the first 2 games, and then again has had 22 over the past 3. So just it can flip on on a dime. And with Marcus, I would say like nothing with Marcus tonight surprised me in terms of the shot selection, the turnovers. It was just so much of the bad Marcus and very little of the good Marcus outside of the first quarter, I would say. And then from the first quarter on, he was progressively worse. And typically with Marcus, it's like it's either positive with a little bit of negative, or like a mixed bag, but still probably more positive than negative. Tonight was a lot more negative than positive, and he was again, might have been his worst game of the season or in that conversation. Like he was a detrimental player tonight. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. Luke has to produce something offensively, otherwise he's useless. He just gets picked on defensively. 1 point in 31 minutes is not cutting it. I agree. I mean, I touched on this a little bit earlier. I think he still has some utility as a shooter, as a decoy, as a spacer, but not utility in the sense of being a 31-minute a night guy. Like that role is more of a 15, 18, 20-minute a night guy, which is more in line with what Luke has been for most of his career, especially in like a playoff context. So I think that I think it's been a combination of like some level of fatigue with how many minutes he's been playing and his offensive usage, some level of their physicality and athleticism, and some level of them shaking his confidence, rattling his confidence to some degree where he is just not looking to shoot anymore. I mean, the fact that Luke played 31 minutes and took 4 shots tonight, like that's not all Houston's defense and that's not all the Lakers offense. It's partly those two things, but part of that's on Luke too. So yeah, he's got to be much better moving forward. Jamie, again, thank you for the super chat. Braun needs to attack the paint earlier. AR needs to be more efficient. Rui needs to stop hesitating on his threes, and we have to quit doubling Şengün. Agreed on all of those points. I think at this point, I'll say I watched LeBron in pregame warmups today. His jumper looked great. He was hitting everything, and I was like, okay, maybe this is going to be the game where LeBron breaks through with the jumper. That was not the case tonight. The jumper has not been there. Interestingly, with Houston, like he hit one of the biggest shots, if not the biggest shot of the series with that 3 to tie the game. I would argue the biggest shot of the series up to this point. But if I'm Houston, like the counter is like, I'm playing off of LeBron more. And I'm just saying, if you want to shoot pull-up threes with a hand in your face, like shoot them as much as you want. We're not letting you get to the paint. It felt like they were playing him for the jumper a lot and forcing him to drive. And I thought that was an interesting approach to say the least. But I agree that him attacking the paint, getting downhill. I thought the one thing with LeBron that I would maybe be most encouraged by off of tonight was he did have some extra juice getting downhill and beating guys off the dribble. Now, a lot of that was the mismatch hunting and attacking weaker defenders, but that's the name of the game, right? And so I would like to see him get downhill and set that tone a little bit earlier. I thought he had moments of that in the first quarter, but just doing it more consistently and not as much like now the Lakers are down double digits and they need to make this comeback in the fourth. And now he starts doing that, which was more the case tonight. Agree on AR. Again, the 3-point shooting I don't hold against him just based on his absence, and typically the legs and the conditioning are the thing that needs the most work. But the finishing tonight was, again, off the top of my head, at least 3 layups, could have been even more, and he's got to be better inside the arc. And then, yeah, Rui, I talked about this, I think on yesterday's stream in terms of the adjustments and stuff. Like one of the things with Reed has just been Rui has a relatively slow release. Like that's for as great of a shooter as Rui is, as great of a spacer as Rui is. And like, he's got a pretty jump shot. He's got great form. And one of the things that I think is most impressive with Rui on both his threes and his pull-up twos is Rui basically shoots them the exact same way. And that's like not always the case for shooters. Like Rui always has the elbow tucked in, the wrist snap, the follow through. Like Rui is very consistent with his form. And I think that's part of why he's such a great shooter. The issue with it, the only issue, is that he has a relatively slow wind up and release. And because of that, I mean, I talked about it earlier in the series. He had a couple plays where he thinks he's open, he goes to shoot, and the defender closes out, contests, and Rui has to then change his mind in air and try to throw a jump pass to somebody. One time it went out of bounds. One time it was deflected, or one time it was a turnover, it was a steal. One time it got deflected out of bounds, Lakers ball. But that has been an issue for him at times. Then you add in with Reed guarding him, it's like he can shoot over Reed, but he, in terms of threes, but he's not. Rui doesn't like taking contested threes. So in that case, Rui is going to wait for the closeout, then try to rack the closeout or turn it into a post up. And at that point, I think the defense has won because he's not hitting those contested pull-up middies as frequently as he typically does, still hitting them at a decent clip, but not at his normal, 55-ish% that we're accustomed to. So, or I would have to check the numbers on that, but at least to memory in the eye test, I would say he's not quite at that level here. And so I think Houston's done a good job of speeding him up and sort of taking him out of his game, and some of those open looks that he was getting earlier are now turning into reversals or him now having to dribble or try to make a move. And I think Rui's at his best, in three ways: open three, transition, dunk, or cut, like some sort of getting the ball from a teammate on the move for an easy dunk or finish, or the one dribble pull up, two dribble pull up. It's got to be very quick with him, not a lot of thinking. When I think the longer he has to think through something, the more problematic that can become for him. And it's just not a strength of his offensive game. And so that's where I think Houston is really making him think. And I think we're seeing some of the limitations with that. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. AR's first game back from post-injury Christmas, 15 points on 3 for 9 shooting, 1 for 5 from 3. Second game, 35 points on 12 of 17, 5 for 8 from 3, expecting a better AR in game 6. Yeah, so that was the Philly. First one was the Brooklyn game. Second one was the Philly game. One thing I will note is that after the Philly game, he did not keep that up. He then went on. Remember, he had like a month-long stretch where I think he only hit 20 points 3 or 4 times over that span. So the Philly game was a high water mark. But if we want to be fair here in terms of like the big picture, he had the big game and shot it much better, but then was up and down for like over a month. Now, Luka was there. He was adjusting to, at the time, being more of the third option versus being the second option prior to injury. So I think part of that was he also missed about the same amount of time. It ended up being closer to like 5 weeks, almost 6 weeks. So missed a little bit more time, but kind of similar. And that was a calf injury too. So different. It's one thing hurting your ribs and an oblique area versus your calf and your lower body. But yeah, I mean, I would expect a better AR in game 6 as well. And I think he's going to shoot better. I think he's going to play better. Zephyr, thank you for the super chat. As far as I'm concerned, game 7 is Friday and Houston need to play like the down team. Can't let it become a 0-0 sudden death one game series back here in LA. I agree. And I think this is a great perspective. Now you got to be careful just because if you entirely empty the clip in game 6 and then if JJ's like, we're playing 6 guys tonight and that's it. And like DA will give you a 6-minute rest for Jackson. We'll play Jake and Vando like each 5 minutes and like each do like a 2 or 3 minute shift in each half. And then the guards, like the perimeter guys of LeBron, Rui, Austin, Marcus, and Luke, we're rotating with those guys, right? And it's at least 3 of the 5 on the court at all times. If you update the clip and you lose, like it's great if you win, right? If you update the clip and you lose, now you're in a tough spot. That was kind of what happened to LA in game 4 against Minnesota was, and it was a must-win situation. Obviously, they're about to go down 3-1 if they lost that game, but they emptied the clip in that second half, and it was like LA that was it. That was the series. They did not have the morale. They did not have the spirit. They did not have the confidence, and they did not have the legs, quite frankly, in that game 5. And Minnesota just busted their ass, right? And so that would be the one fear with like throwing everything into game 6. Now that said, I think you got to basically throw everything into game 6. You got to get right to the line. Maybe not like 99, 100%, but 93 to 95% there. And like, I'm not, to be clear, I'm not saying like, don't play. Like it's more so from like a coaching perspective of like game 7. I think it's all bets are off. You play someone 48 minutes, 46 minutes if you have to. Like game 7, it's just like you have to win the game. That's it. There's no, doesn't matter about who's tired, who's injured, game 7 is like you have to win the game. Point being is like I don't know if I would approach it that drastically in game 6. I'm making a slight distinction there, but you get close to the line. Like if you play 7 guys in game 6 and it's just the top 6 plus Jackson, that might just be where you're at. And maybe 1 or 2 shifts for one of Jake or Vando, that might just be where you're at in game 6 because you got to gut it out and you got to win the game. And then you have to figure out how you're going to try to survive against OKC. But yeah, I mean, I think to your point, I would love to see more urgency from this group. I did not feel the urgency in game 4. I felt the urgency in the first and fourth quarter tonight, but not in the second and third quarter. And it did feel like there were times where they were sort of like, as long as we keep it close, we can beat this team. And I don't think that could be like, yes, they have done that several times this season, going back to the regular season. And then games 1 and 2 were relatively close, but the Lakers were able to prevail in the clutch. Game 3, they have the epic comeback. But you can't approach any of these games as if like, well, let's just keep it relatively close and we'll just out execute this team in the clutch. That's not a sustainable or a winning strategy. So I agree with the premise here. I think that they have to treat it like a game 7 or as close to a game 7 as is realistic without being a game 7. And they have to have a different mentality going into this game because I think you've seen some slippage in terms of their focus, their intensity, their just aggression over the last couple of games. And that has to shift back in a big way. Alma, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Jovan, shame not to get the W after 8 and gives you 18 and 17. Team was too complacent. Complacent's a great word. That's a word I actually was thinking about on the drive home and then didn't mention it yet. So I'm glad you did. Also, tired legs after 2 days off is concerning. Desperately need to get younger and more athletic next season. Yeah, like I would say that we are learning some things about this group in terms of I mean, some of the same things that we already knew, but like shooting comes and goes with this group, despite having 2 of the best shooters in the league in Rui and Luke. Now, I think it would look better if Austin was available for the full series, if Luka was available for the full series. So there's an element of like missing those 2 guys has impacted the offense, but like if we're just judging the supporting cast from an offensive perspective and a shooting perspective, you want more from them. And like, I think the thing with the bench is the bench is the Banshees and it's like the defensive guys, but it's not like Jake or Vando is playing all defense level defense. Even Jackson has been a mixed bag for most of the series and has had his lunch eaten by Şengün and also dealt with foul trouble throughout most of the series. So it's like, I'm really looking at, if I'm the Lakers, there's several guys who are clear keepers. There are several guys who I think it depends on the price. And there's several guys you have to consider moving on from, or at least upgrading their spot in the rotation. And it doesn't even necessarily mean getting rid of them, but at least making them less important, because right now, I think we're starting to see some of the flaws and some of the weaknesses within the rotation in the primary guys. So I agree, younger, more athletic. I would like better defenders because I think JJ's been able to mask the lack of defensive talent with scheme and with strategy. But part of me is like, imagine if JJ had better defensive pieces. Imagine if JJ had better rim protection. Imagine if JJ had better defensive rebounding. Imagine if JJ had more switchable defenders and better ball pressure defenders and more athleticism. What would the Lakers defense look like in that scenario if he's able to have it humming at a certain level right now with much lesser talent and not really checking a lot of those boxes? So I think youth, athleticism, defense, shooting, like those are the 4 things for me. And also being able to withstand ball pressure more, maybe some type of guard off the bench that could help with that specifically. Andrew, thank you for the super chat. Jovan, Lakers have 2 chances, have a nervous feeling. Yeah, I mean, I would say depends how you want to look at it, right? You could look at it glass half empty, glass half full, glass half full. They have 2 chances. So, and they just have to win 1. Houston has to win 2. So even if Houston, the crazy thing is, as deflating as it would be, let's just say, because sometimes you'll see it's a little bit different when a team's up 3-0 and it starts to be 3-2. But in general, if you just look at like a normal playoff series through 5 games, if a team is up 3-2 and it's going back to the team that's down for game 6, sometimes that team no-shows that game 6. And there are several series that immediately come to mind where it's like, it's 3-2 after 5. The home team is up. They go back to the road team for game 6 and they get just destroyed, ran off the floor, don't really show up. And then they're like, well, it's going to go back for 7. We'll take care of it at home. That's a risky strategy. But the reason I'm bringing that up is even if Houston destroys the Lakers in game 6 and it's an even worse loss than game 4, the Lakers can still win the series because they have another chance. They're at home and no team has ever blown a 3-0 lead. So like there is an element of just history kind of being on their side of, I think it's not just, you don't want to just fall back on that. But I think the reason why no team has come back from a 3-0 lead is because it's next to impossible to win 4 in a row once you've already lost 3 to start the series. So some team will probably do it for the Lakers' sake. They obviously hope it's not the Rockets to do it in this series, but it is incredibly difficult to beat a team. Like, I mean, if you just break it down, you're basically asking the Rockets to sweep the Lakers, right? And it's hard if you have already lost the first 3 games of a series. And again, we could say like, sure, some flukiness down the stretch of game 3. They had 2 brain farts that cost them that game. Maybe it was more like a 2-1 series after 3, but the scoreboard said 3-0. So it said 3-0. It was 3-0. And it's just really difficult to sweep a team when you've already lost to them 3 times. And if you've already lost to them 3 times, there are obviously some advantages they have that are built in. Now, I think the difference here is that the Lakers just are starting to break down physically and look fatigued. And like, that's really, to me, like if the Lakers had the same amount of energy and just not as much fatigue in tonight as like, let's just say the same juice as they had in the first couple games of the series, I think they win tonight. And we're talking about a 105-97 win and the Lakers have advanced to play OKC, but that's no longer the case. And they're now playing in less than 48 hours. And that's where some of that fear comes in. But I still think they're going to win the series. Are they maybe going to lose game 6 and it's going to get a little dicey there and they're going to go to 7? Maybe. But they have 2 chances to win 1. Houston has 2 chances to win 2. Houston has to win both. So I get it though. I understand like the fan experience. You don't want to be in this scenario. You wanted the Lakers to win tonight. You want them to win game 6. So I get it. But I think there's still room for optimism and hope here. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. JJ played all games this season, but JL played all games this season, but only plays 9 minutes. Lack of trust by JJ on his bench again. LBJ 3-point shot not working, so why not just drive more? I think LeBron finally got to that point, but was not there in the middle portion of the game. With Jake, I mean, I go back and forth because I know Jake's just getting it from the fan base right now, and I understand. I think it's been a little overblown where if we're talking about why the Lakers have lost the last couple of games, like Jake LaRavia is not even a top 5 reason. I don't even think he's like a top 7 reason, but sometimes the chatter, the noise is very loud with Jake or whoever is like kind of the bench scapegoat of the moment. But I mean, I don't think he's been at the level that the Lakers have needed offensively. Like he was supposed to be this guy who was a Swiss Army knife offensively, could spot up, could attack closeouts, could also like, I think an underrated part of his game is comparing him to Rui, for example. I think Jake's actually a better post player and a better player playing out of advantage against a small guy. Like I think and they've hid Reed on Jake sometimes. If you get Jake with some of those deep seals, I think he might not finish, but he's going to draw a foul. Like he's really good at drawing fouls and really punishing the smaller player and being physical in those moments. But we just have not really seen some of that. So, he's had some nice cuts, some nice offensive rebounds in the series, but just not been the factor that the Lakers have needed. And they don't need a lot from him, but he should pretty consistently be like a 8 to 10 point scorer. And that's just not how this has played out. And then defensively, I haven't loved him being the point of attack guy on Reed, just because I think Reed's a little too quick and shifty for him, but he's gotten into the mud and the paint and boxed out and rebounded and been a tough guy. I've actually liked his defense on Şengün. I think he and Rui both, I thought, had some good possessions and shifts against Şengün with cross matches or just even being the primary guy. So, I do think Jake and Vando and Jackson, again, you can't just play those guys 25 minutes, but it's also tough to be like, Jake needed to play 20 minutes tonight, because I don't know where you take the 10 minutes from. I mean, maybe you take it from some of it from Luke, but Luke still, again, has a certain amount of utility as a shooter and as a threat out there, even if he's not making it. Whereas Jake, I think they're very comfortable letting him shoot, letting him do whatever he wants. Pinty, thank you for the super chat. Tari Eason overturned call, laughable and a joke. I was very surprised by that call. I think what they tried to argue or did argue technically by making the call was Austin kind of leaned forward and like sort of like poked at the ball and like made contact with him. So I think like the lunge and reach in from Austin was what they deemed as him not being in proper position to take the charge. Like he was kind of moving backward, then lunge forward, then move back again, and then got hit and then fell. And they just deemed that the wording they used was non-legal position. So I guess my read on that was they were arguing that he was not, it wasn't like he was solely retreating into the position and then took the charge. He basically leaned in, fouled him, and then retreated to take the charge. So, I mean, yeah, I was shocked by that. I thought it was marginal contact at best on Austin, and I don't think it should have been overturned, and also would have fouled out Tari Eason had that stayed. But yeah, I mean, I think the Lakers I thought came out fine tonight, but there were some questionable calls here and there. Pinty, thank you for the super chat. JJ needs to take a timeout with 19.9 seconds left. Yeah, I was surprised by that JJ seems to be a guy in general. His philosophy is like, let the guys figure it out on the fly, but he's also so great with his ATOs that I would have loved to have seen him call a set. Now, if you're thinking through it, I think LA had one timeout left. I could be wrong on that. Maybe they had two, but I'm pretty sure they had one. If you call the timeout there, I mean, it's great if you get a quick basket, but if you don't, or let's just say it's like an 8-second basket, then you foul them, then they like miss or split. Now you're in a position where you would love to have a timeout for that final possession to potentially tie it. That's where you might miss that timeout, but you're also kind of creating a theoretical problem that doesn't exist in the moment, right? And you're projecting a hypothetical of, if this happens, well, I might need the timeout or whatever. And so I thought they should have called timeout. I'm in agreement with you. Sarah Talks Ball, thank you for the super chat. I know this team does well when they're underdogs, but I wish they spent just a little less time with their backs against the wall. Great way of putting it. Sometimes you just kind of wish they would make things a little easier on themselves. And I think the most Lakers thing possible here in terms of like how their season has gone and just this team would be losing game 6 and then even being down like early in game 7 and then rallying to win game 7 and winning it in 7. Like that would be a very Lakers, 2025-26 Lakers way to close out this series. But maybe they surprise us and go in and beat Houston in game 6. I would not rule that out either. But yeah, they certainly have a knack for making things a little bit harder on themselves than currently, or than it should be. Cage Britt, thank you for the super chat. Would you rather have Tari at 16 to 18 million or Rui at 12 to 14 million? It's an interesting question. I would, my cop-out answer here to some degree would be like, what does the rest of the roster look like in terms of, is LeBron back? Have they added a more defensive-minded center? Have they added another defensive wing? Or is Tari Eason or Rui in this case like the other starting front court player? Because if it's like, who would I rather start next to LeBron and fit next to LeBron? I would rather have Tari. Like just in terms of who I'd probably rather have as a starter, I think I lean Tari Eason. I think he's a better rebounder. He's a better defender, and he's better off the dribble. Now, Rui's multiple tiers ahead of him as a shooter and also as a pull-up mid-range guy. But I think Tari Eason's done a pretty good job on LeBron the last couple games, but then he'll also be guarding Luke. He guarded Austin some tonight. His defensive versatility, for me, I think I tend to favor like the defensive side. So I think with the defense, the athleticism, the toughness, the rebounding, I would lean Tari in this case. But it also depends on like, there's so many factors here. If the Lakers lose LeBron, I think that has an impact on, in like also how do they try to replace LeBron. I also think if you lose Luke, then you don't necessarily want to lose Luke and Rui and just lose all that shooting, right? So there is some context within it, but more so in a vacuum, I would say I would rather have Tari Eason, and I think he's going to get paid more than Rui. But we'll see. Like Rui's been solid for the series, to be clear. I just think sometimes the overall defense, the processing, the awareness, he does tend to make some pretty loud mental mistakes 2 to 4 times a game, and those stick in your head more. So, Tari Eason makes some loud mistakes too, to be clear. Tari Eason will dribble the ball off his foot. He'll airball an open three. Like, I'm not saying he's the beacon of consistency or stability, but I do think he has a little bit more of a wild card variable. And with Rui, for example, like when Rui has quiet offensive nights, it typically affects the rest of his game. Tari Eason can have a bad offensive night and still play awesome defense and get 7 rebounds and just be an energetic asset to your group. Whereas Rui is very shot dependent to have an impact, in my opinion, or like most of the time. Zach Wan, thank you for the super chat. We get BTA by OKC, rest Luka. Rui's disappointing because he got the body but cannot utilize it against Reed. Come on, good shooter but scared to shoot. So this segues into another Rui point here. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't want to get too far ahead to the OKC matchup, but I cannot, like, I think if you replace the late, like even without Houston has played, I think OKC in this situation, if you just swap the Lakers out and put Houston in, I think they're sweeping this Houston team, or maybe Houston gets a game, but I think there's a giant gap between OKC and Houston to just show you like the Lakers are sort of treading water with Houston. And I think the next level is like multiple tiers ahead, but I mean, it's going to be 7 game 7s, but that's assuming, it can even get to 7 against OKC, but yeah, it's going to be a tough series, but with Rui, yeah, I mean, it's affected the series. It's allowed Reed to stay on the floor, and he's got to play with more, confidence offensively. Harry Chinani, thank you for the super chat. This is exactly what OKC wants. Extend the series as long as possible. Tire both teams out before demolishing either team. Yeah, I mean, that was my third takeaway. That was why I brought that up. It's playing into OKC's hands. I think they're already going to be a heavy favorite against either of these teams, with potentially no KD on the Houston side and no Luka on the Lakers side, but also getting one of the two teams very tired coming off of a 6 or 7 game series. Because I think a big thing with the OKC series is like, if we're plotting out, and we said this, I said this with the Houston series, right? I said, if we are mapping out, like the Lakers entered the series as massive underdogs, depending on the book, it was minus 750 to minus 900. So a lot of people are picking the Lakers to get swept or at most win one game. And I talked about the blueprint to winning the series was going to be, winning game 1, set the tone, and have success in the series early, and that builds up some margin for error throughout the course of the series. And that's how the series has played out. I did not anticipate LA winning both of the first games and starting out 3-0, but like LA built themselves a cushion here where they have some more margin for error, where again, even now, they just have to win one of the final 2, where Houston has to win both. That's going to be really difficult to do going into OKC. Like, I think the most likely result for either LA or Houston is you get destroyed in game 1, and then you make your adjustments and try to find a way to win game 2. But you go down 2-0 to OKC. I mean, at that point, it's basically over. So I think LA, to have any shot of beating OKC, has to win one of the first 2. It's going to be really tough to win game 1. So it's more on game 2. But look, we'll see. Sometimes you're in a certain rhythm, and maybe you play game 7. You have your rhythm, your legs, you're still in game shape. OKC has been off for a week. they're a little rusty in game one. Like we can see that play out. But with LA struggling so much from a fatigue and physicality perspective, like again, Houston is just they're not in the same ballpark as OKC as a ball pressure and turnover team. And they've had a lot of success with that against LA, but OKC will, I think it's like a minimum of like 4 to 5, at least with the current way the Lakers have been playing in each of these games. I would add an additional 4 to 5 turnovers against OKC's defense compared to Houston's. Like, I think it's that big of a gap. Sarah Talks Ball, thank you for the super chat. No shirts or rally towels at the arena is bad juju. Yeah, so I saw a lot of people flaming the Lakers crowd tonight. I would say, it was very loud in the fourth quarter. It was not as loud as game one or game two, but the Lakers also, it had some loud, like when Austin checked in midway through the first quarter, they played some Oklahoma song and the crowd was going wild. And there were some moments in the first quarter where it was loud, not very loud in the second or third quarter. I think it was louder in person than it came off on TV, at least based on the reactions I was seeing on social media. But I would say definitely like a distant third. If we're ranking game one, game two, game five was a distant third among the three crowds. But at the same time, Houston took, when you're down, like you do want to give the home team a certain boost and energy and whatnot, but it was a deflating game at times, and it was also a low scoring game, right? So as productive as it is, like if this was even like a 132 to 126 game, I think naturally there's a little bit more energy in the building because scoring gives energy. I think it's that simple. And when you're in this rock fight, and every possession matters and you're turning the ball over, you're missing open threes, it just felt like it kind of spiraled a bit, and the crowd naturally was not as engaged or as involved. But, some people left early, and some people left pretty early. That there was like a mass exodus around like 2 minutes left when I was like, there's still a lot of game left. But yeah, I guess to this point though, no shirts, no towels, no giveaways from the Lakers side. Like, I'm not gonna say that's the reason why they lost, but didn't necessarily help the environment, I guess. Although we're not talking about Portland here, so it's different. Whereas the balance says ball movement gets the crowd going to ISO ball puts people to sleep. Fair point. I agree. Civic Citizen says 5 more minutes. We will go. We will do a true 5 more minutes, not a Jovan 5 more minutes, which could be 5 more hours. Connor Phillips, how likely do you think it is for us to win game 6? I think it's pretty close to 50-50. I would probably make the Rockets like slight favorites with it being a home game and just how they're playing right now. But then I would also make the Lakers slight home favorites in game 7 if it goes to a game 7. But I think the line came out. I think the Rockets it's like -3.5, which is they're actually bigger favorites. The Lakers are bigger favorites going into tonight than the Rockets are going into game 6. So there's also the KD component. It's hard to tell, but I would say combination of how the Lakers are currently playing mixed with the fatigue, mixed with the quick turnaround, and it being a Houston home game, I would probably, but we're talking, I don't know, maybe 52-48 favorites, 53-47. I would slightly favor Houston from a percentage outcome standpoint. But then again, if the Lakers don't win game 6 and it goes to 7, I would favor LA. Home teams tend to win game 7. I don't know the exact percentage, but I believe it's over 70%. It's a pretty big gap there. So I also think just the stakes, the history, LA would find a way to win game 7. But I think it's hard not to favor Houston, at least in game 6. Chuck Dangler, aka Fang Charlie, LOL Jovan, I think it's time to talk about your offseason plans. First time being independent. What are you going to work on? Where are you going to go? Well, we're not there yet. There's plenty of time for the offseason stuff. But if the Lakers win the championship, I will be covering that through the championship. If the Lakers end at some point in the offseason earlier, whether it's this round, next round, whenever, I will continue to cover the Lakers, but it'll be more in a probably like 2 to 3 times a week. Like I'll still be doing Lakers Collective twice a week. On here, I'll probably be going twice a week with Lakers stuff. And then I'm going to be doing like the big games of the week. I'll be doing post-game reactions starting again whenever the Lakers are eliminated. If they are eliminated, maybe they're not eliminated. Maybe they make the finals. Maybe they win the championship. And I just cover that the rest of the way. But if the Lakers season ends early, I will be doing Lakers stuff on here twice a week, Lakers stuff on Lakers Collective twice a week, and then doing some of the bigger games, especially like game 5s, game 7s, game 6s, like, you know, of whatever, you know, round we're in at that point. So that's it. Otherwise, taking a couple family trips this summer, going to summer league, might be going to the draft, depending on how some things work out. We'll see. Maybe probably too late for me to go to the combine, so I'll probably sit that one out. But I've actually never been to the draft. That's been one of the few NBA things I've not yet done yet. So that would be really fun to do. And the Lakers are going to have the 25th pick. So yeah, I mean, I would say this is my second time being independent because technically I left the Athletic in June last year. So I did have like July and August off, but this is the first like full off season to your point. Back then I was still with the Athletic through May and June. So yeah, whenever the season ends, I'm not going anywhere through the rest of the NBA season. Post NBA season, you know, there'll be draft coverage, there'll be free agency coverage, summer league coverage. And then I'm taking almost all of August off. But outside of that, I'm going to be around for the foreseeable future. Cage Britt says he'll be at Summer League. Awesome. We've talked about, I don't want to put anything out there but whatever. We've talked about doing a Lakers Collective live show. I think that would be really fun. And we're all going to be there. I don't know if we're all going to be there at the exact same time. So I think we'd have to coordinate that just to make sure that we're all there. But I think that'd be really fun. We got Fang Charlie and Hans De Leon talking about the Asia tour. I'm not quite sure if I'm going to be able to pull that off this year, but it is on the list. And if it's not on this summer, I definitely want to make it happen next summer because I'm doing a big Europe trip this summer. It's been too long since I've been to Serbia, been too long since my wife's been to Germany, and then we really wanted to do Italy for our honeymoon. It ended up not working out, so Italy's also on our list. Cage Brit offers to be my security. I appreciate that. We'll see if we're able to finagle that. And then Matea says Jovan's going to be really busy covering the Lakers in the NBA Finals. Hey, it's on the table. Your boy Lakers says missed the live Lakers in 7. I would rank. Yeah, I would say right now that's probably my prediction. I was just asked about if Rockets are favored in Game 6 or how I would view that. I would view the Rockets as slight favorites and then the Lakers as favorites in Game 7. So I would say if I'm ranking the series outcomes right now, I'd probably go Lakers in 7, Lakers in 6, Rockets in 7 as the three, the order of the way it can play out, in my opinion. Alma asks, do you think Denver avoids elimination tomorrow? That's a tough one. I think Minnesota's in a situation where they have to win tomorrow. Otherwise their season's over. I mean, technically they can go into Denver and win, but I think if Minnesota needs like 65 points combined from Julius Randle and Iota Sumo, and if they get that, I think they could win that game. But I think losing Ant and Dante, and with the possibility of Aaron Gordon coming back at some point here in Game 6 or Game 7, I think that has shifted things in Denver's favor. So I'll say they stave off elimination and then force the game 7. At that point, you'd probably favor Denver to just pull off the 3-1 upset. But certainly all it takes is, we saw what Io did in that second half. Julius Randle has had a big series at times. Rudy's obviously had a big series, Jaden McDaniels, etc. So it's possible Minnesota wins one of these last two, but I think it's a different situation than what it would be more like if there's just a different situation. I'm not even going to try to compare it, but I mean, they lost their starting backcourt, so it's tough to overcome that. Hans De Leon, where can we buy your merch? So I'm glad you brought this up. I'm basically at the finish line with it in terms of I've tested 7 different shirts. Not only have I tested 7 different shirts, but I've tested different sizes of logo. I'm very meticulous about all this in terms of quality, but also in terms of logo size, logo location, which logos I want where. So when you see the final product, you'll be like, oh, this is just like a shirt with some logos on it. But trust me in that I've been very I was just going over it with my wife. I did a little fashion show today, testing on a bunch of different stuff and kind of talking through how big do we want this, where do we want this, and what color and all this stuff. So I was honestly considering launching it tomorrow. I don't think tomorrow is the best day to launch it, coming off of this loss and just like the vibe right now. But maybe Friday. If not Friday, I might hold it to Monday. Connor Phillips, what's the biggest surprise of the playoffs so far? I would say Orlando, in them being up 3-2 on Detroit. In retrospect, like the physicality in that series and Orlando being able to hold their own, if not even push Detroit around at times, makes it like more, you can kind of like understand the series a little bit more. But I would say Orlando and then Denver are the two biggest surprises for me. Orlando, as in like how good Orlando has looked, and just, I mean, they had a good chance to win tonight. They did not, but they were in it in the fourth quarter, and I think they have a decent chance to win this in 6 in Orlando, even without Franz. And then Denver, game 1 was up 19 in the first half in game 2 and blew that, then lost game 3 and 4. The anti-Jokic sentiment from the national media reached a fever pitch, and then they caught a huge break with the Ant and Dante injuries. Like, I think if those guys don't go down, Minnesota wins, and they might have won in 5. Like, maybe Denver has like the last stand, they win game 5, and then they lose in 6 in Minnesota, but Minnesota was going to win the series. It's just, in my opinion, and that's coming from someone who's been a Denver believer. I thought Denver had a real shot to make the conference finals, and maybe they do, but just based on the state of how they've played, based on the state of Aaron Gordon and Peyton Watson's health and availability, I think Denver struggling as much as they did through the first 4 games of that series was a surprise to me. And then I would also throw in Toronto. Like, they nearly won tonight to take a 3-2 lead. So that's been a very competitive series that I think is probably going to go 7. Cage Britt, do you think the current healthy Thunder would have beaten 2023-24 Celtics in a 7-game series? Yes, I do. I think this team is better than the 2024 Celtics. What would have been, I think what would have been a very interesting series had it played out that way, but it obviously didn't, was like everyone's popular finals pick was Denver-Boston that year. And obviously Dallas, like Minnesota beat Denver. They had the big comeback in game 7. Then Dallas beat Minnesota, but based on the regular season, they had like 2 classic games in the regular season between Boston and Denver. And I think that would have been a very competitive 6 or 7 game series. And who knows, maybe Denver goes back to back in that case. But I mean, that Boston team was really good. I just think this, okay. I think this is, to me, this might be the best team we've seen since the 2018 Warriors, I guess. I think they're in that conversation. Mateus says, Jovan, don't be too serious. You can smile a little. I think I smile a lot. I think I actually smile too much. But I'll smile for you. Civic Citizen, will you have any hats with your merch? Currently, not right now. So the slate is as of right now. And more so, I think it's because I don't really love the current hat options with the supplier that I have. But it's like regular fit t-shirts, just kind of, comfort, soft, nice t-shirt. Then a boxier, oversized fit. So I'm giving a couple of options depending on the vibe that people want to go for. Then hoodies, then coffee mugs, then stickers and magnets. So that's like the initial launch is going to be basically 2 types of t-shirts, hoodies, magnets, stickers, and coffee mugs. And that's how I'm starting it out. But we'll continue to expand and do more things. Connor Phillips, I think the 24 Celtics offensive ceiling is higher though. So who knows how a series will actually go. Yeah, I mean, we could talk through the hypothetical, obviously. I would agree. I think the Celtics are better offensively. I think OKC is better defensively. I think Shea is better than Jaylen Brown or Jason Tatum. So I think OKC has the best player in the series, but then Boston would have the next 2 best players in the series. But they have Drew Holiday, Derek White. I mean, they have some defensive firepower as well. Porzingis, Horford, that was a pretty good Boston team. I think it'll be a fun series. I think it's probably a 6 or 7 game series, but I would give OKC the slightest, or not the slightest, but I'd probably be like a 55-45 favorite in my opinion. Connor Phillips says, show off that Zac Efron smile. That is a deep cut to months ago. Jay Note says maybe we need a game 7. Maybe they'll actually show up with some sense of urgency. Yeah, that could I think there is some positives here in terms of if we're looking big picture, right? The Lakers were going to be underdogs against OKC regardless of if they won this in 4 or if they win it in 7. So yes, I think winning it in 7 is more detrimental from your fatigue and injury risk and all that stuff. But there's an element here of where, like, again, if we were making contract decisions after game 2, the contracts for Marcus, for Luke, for Rui look much different than where they might end up after this series. So you do need the full scope of a series to evaluate and to see how opponents can adjust against a certain player, how a player can hold up during the course of a series, and you make that decision. I mean, partly based on their history, partly based on the regular season, partly based on the playoffs. Like, there's a lot of factors. Their injury history, their age, their career trajectory. There's a lot of things that go into it. But I think a big thing is learning about each player, which I think we've started to get a better sense of each guy, and just at even a higher level, right? Like, I think there's things we've learned about Rui that we didn't necessarily know based on the previous playoff runs. We've obviously gotten a better sense with Ayton and Smart and Luke, etc. So we're learning about all these guys, and they're still in it. They still have a really good chance to win game 6 or game 7. But you're learning more. You're getting more reference points. And I still think the Lakers are going to advance, even if it's not the prettiest thing. And then OKC, you walk into that buzzsaw and you just see how it goes, and you see who plays well and who doesn't, and you go from there. But it could be something, to your point, that galvanizes the group going into that OKC series. I just wish game 4 was the galvanizer rather than game 4, game 5, potentially game 6. Like, just got to be careful there. Connor Phillips, do you like the new tanking changes? I'm on the fence. This will be the last one, and then I will wrap here. I don't know. I like in theory that there's something to dissuade being the very bottom of the barrel, but then you're kind of in this weird, like, the middle teams or like the middle lottery teams are going to be sort of tanking to be there. So there's always some unintended consequences with any of the tanking, tanking reform measures, and there's always a loophole. There's always something that someone's going to exploit. But I think it's a little trickier to be like, I'm trying to go from like seventh best, the seventh worst team in the league to the fifth worst team in the league versus I'm trying to go from like the fourth worst team to the worst team, right? So that there's a clear incentive to be a bottom 3, bottom 5 team and get certain lottery odds, where now it's a little harder to manipulate it. It's still possible, and I think you will see some egregious late season tanking from the teams in that middle portion to try and get into the sweet spot of the best odds. And I think Mark Cuban was tweeting about it, you'll see teams start to like hoard first round picks in particular drafts to try and have the best odds of moving up. So you'll see more trades, more movement with some of these picks as an unintended consequence, or maybe as an intended consequence. But I'm with you. I'm on the fence with it. It's not my favorite suggestion, but it's one of the better ones and one of the more realistic ones, obviously. So we'll see where it goes. But you could have a scenario in which, I mean, you also have a scenario in which some of the lower teams have the same odds as, like, let's actually, I tweeted a graphic about it that I found pretty cool. I'll pull this up here quickly. This was from earlier in the day. Shout out to Lev Akabas. I don't probably butchered that, but here is the graphic for those watching on YouTube. Look at this here. So the proposed lottery odds in visual form. So worst record goes from 14% chance for the number 1 pick to 5.4. Second and third, also 14%, go to 5.4. Fourth goes from 12 to 8. And then you got these flattened odds from 4th to 10th. So 4th, 5th, and 6th all take a hit in terms of their odds, but then 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th all increase. And then when you get to 11th, 12th, 13th, and 14th, they all increase dramatically. They all more than double. And so you're going to, I mean, it's kind of wild to me that the team with the worst record has the same odds as the team with the 14th worst record. I don't know that I necessarily agree with that, because, like, in theory, the draft is supposed to be helping the bad teams, right? And it's sort of like, okay, you're bad for 2 years, maybe even a few years tops. We're going to help you get some talent to get out of this. But we obviously see teams abuse it and be in there for half decade to a decade or even longer in some cases. But it is interesting. It is, though, like, it's odd. You're going to see teams tank from that. Like, teams might tank from being the 10 seed in the play-in to being a bottom 10 team. And then teams might also tank from being like the 5th or 4th worst record to trying, or being from, I guess it was more so the play-in mix. You don't want to be in the bottom 3. So I guess you'll have some action there where those teams are trying to win, but I don't know. It's better than the current system, but I don't like love it, if that makes sense. But with all that said, I'm going to wrap here. I will be back tomorrow morning at morning Pacific time, technically late morning, 11 a.m. Pacific time for Lakers Collective with Trevor and Jason. We will talk Game 5. We will preview Game 6. We'll talk about Austin's return. We'll talk about the offensive struggles, and then, of course, get into the Q&A. Then I'll be back later in the day with Raj Chapalu, and we will go through Game 5 rewatch, Game 6 adjustments, and do some Q&A as well. But shout out to the Late Night Gang. Shout out to the chat. Appreciate you all. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow morning, and then again tomorrow evening. I'll talk to you all then. Shout out to the Late Night Gang. Shout out to the chat, and talk to you all tomorrow.